Welcome to Parents Make a Difference. I'm your host, Josie PV. Do you ever feel mentally exhausted? Parental burnout is real, and it starts by neglecting our mental health. Today, I'm looking forward to finding some information through our guest who is going to help us figure out how to prioritize brain health so that we can be better equipped to deal with the challenges of parenting, of life, and be present for our children. Today's guest is Dr. Ksenia Kastanenka, who is an assistant professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School. She also runs a research lab, and it deals with studies of aging, which the particular emphasis on Alzheimer's. I'd like to welcome Dr. Ksenia Kastanenka. Welcome.
Hi, Josie. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So, my day to day job is running a research lab here in Boston, USA. And the, um, the research is focused on aging, on brain health and aging, with special emphasis on Alzheimer's disease. As you know, Alzheimer's disease is a major neurodegenerative disorder. It is a major cause of dementia. And until recently, the field has been struggling with development of disease modifying therapies or therapeutics that can make a difference and slow Alzheimer's disease. Um, so that's the reason why I entered this field. And currently I run a research lab here in Boston studying Alzheimer's disease.
Wonderful. How, with your knowledge, with your expertise, um, how can we live life with better brain health? What are some of your suggestions to the parents out there listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it starts with brain health, starts with whole body health. And I think it's really important to lead a lifestyle that will facilitate a healthy body, right? So things like sleep, that's something that we study in the laboratory. Sleep is very important for our health, and we can talk a little bit about the sleep and how. Um, oh no, sorry, I think I lost you there for a second.
I hear you.
So we can talk a little bit about sleep. Also, diet is important. It really is important what we put into our bodies, so those things actually nourish our bodies and sustain us. It's also important to keep our brain healthy, to provide it the mental stimulation to keep going. And our social interactions with family and friends are also extremely important for good mental health.
So let's start off then with sleep. I know for myself, I have sleep apnea. So very important that I learned about sleep for myself because I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was always exhausted. So that was critical in taking care of that. But, sometimes people say, oh, we can sleep when we're dead, let's just get things done. What are you suggesting?
Yeah, so one of the main emphasis in my laboratory is studying sleep dependent brain rhythms and how sleep impairments actively contribute to Alzheimer's disease. So we know that poor sleep habits can cause Alzheimer's disease later in life. And it's really remarkable that we find that sleep impairments decades before the onset of Alzheimer's disease those poor sleep habits can have a long-lasting effects decades later and lead to Alzheimer's disease. So sleep in general is key. So getting the right amount of sleep and having uninterrupted sleep. Um, so it's important to fall asleep on time, try to go to bed at the same time, have healthy habits, not watch too much TV before going to bed, or using those blue light reflecting glasses, because light actually stimulates our brains. It's a wake signal. And we don't want to do that right before we go to bed. So we have to be really cognizant about what it is we do to get a good night's sleep. And another line of research that recently surfaced is that even if we do sleep for a long period of time, but that sleep is interrupted, that's not good either. So we don't want to have fragmented sleep. We want to have continuous sleep throughout the night, so that our brain goes through all of the processes that it needs to go through. So as soon as we go to sleep, usually we hit what we call relatively quickly what we call deep non-REM sleep, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. And that stage of sleep is very important for memory consolidation. So, those of us who want to remember things from the day before, it's really important that our non REM sleep is uninterrupted and that we spend a sufficient amount of time in this deep non REM sleep. Another line of research that recently surfaced is that that non-REM sleep is very important for clearance of toxic substances from our brain. So clearing out the garbage. So as we go through our day, our brain is actually very, very busy, and it accumulates a lot of toxic proteins that then need to be cleared out during the night. And non-REM sleep is key in that process. So it's important to allow our brain to clear out those toxic substances, and have that allow for that restorative function of sleep to occur. And then as we get closer to the morning, we hit what we call REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And that is when we dream. And at present, it really is not clear whether impairments in REM sleep occur prior to Alzheimer's disease or contribute to Alzheimer's disease. So that line of research is currently under heavy investigation. But what we do know is that not getting enough sleep and not getting enough non-REM sleep is what's something that can contribute to Alzheimer's disease decades later.
Wow. So I had a conversation with you a while back, and you talked about the glasses, and I have kids who
Yes.
are watching screens before going to bed, so I went to get them some of those blue light glasses,
Yeah.
and they did say that it helped them to fall asleep a little quicker. Now, for parents out there or for their children, what do you suggest if they are not getting enough sleep, or sorry, it's difficult for them to fall asleep? What kind of strategies can you suggest that you might know of to help them rev down so that they can fall asleep?
Yeah, yeah. So I think for children, especially like for younger, for younger individuals, I think it's really important to go to bed at, relatively the same time every night, regardless of whether it's a weekday or a weekend. So young children, they tend to get really hyper before they go to bed. So I think it's really important to engage in some of the calming activities, maybe read a book, stay away from TV, stay away from, very physical activities, just so they come down and they do go to bed. And Bed Night Story is an all-time favorite. So I highly recommend parents, dedicating that period of time to their child. And I know it's the last thing you want to do is read a story at the end of a very long, tiresome day. But I think it really kind of puts the children into that zone where they are susceptible to falling asleep relatively quickly, and making sure that the kids, do stay asleep for the whole night, that there are no interruptions. For the parents, I would recommend, like I mentioned, if not staying away from TV, if that is a challenge, then using those blue light glasses. I've used those for years and I absolutely love it. It really made a big difference. I noticed that I fall asleep much faster if I were to use those blue light reflecting glasses. Just calming down, maybe taking a bath, or really prioritizing um, calming down before going to bed, reducing any noise, or any other distractions that could interfere from with going to bed on time and getting that restful sleep, I think is really really important.
Hmm. Yes, I know that sometimes I'm dragging myself to work out and I'm exhausted. And then when I come back from working out, I have energy. So I can relate to that comment when you said, the kids need a calm, not to be jumping around, or not to have more to calm down, because if you're all over and you're exercising and they're running around, the energy is going to make them hyper to go to sleep, just like I got energy after working out when I was exhausted.
Exactly. And, working out, exercise is fantastic. I am pro exercise. I think it's a great way to stay in shape, to get healthy, to relieve stress. But depending, on your personality and how you handle, the endorphins after the exercise, perhaps it's not the best thing to go and exercise right before going to bed. That's what I found. But it's a personal preference.
So,
And also, another thing I want to mention is, like as we get older, or maybe if we take care of, older parents, or, if our parents are a little older, they start complaining, oh, I'm not able to go to sleep as fast as I used to, or I'm not able to sleep through the night, things like that. So I think it's really important to convey that to them, that sleep is important. It is key, and engaging in those behaviors, those calming behaviors before going to bed is important. I'm not proponent of medications, but there are multiple supplements that can help going to sleep, and over the counter as well as prescription drugs.
mhm. Okay, thank you for that. Your next thing on the list that you were saying, so the first one was sleep. What was the next one that you said could help us with
Yeah,
our mental
yeah.
health?
So I think if we want to keep good mental health, I think diet is really really important. And diet is one of those things. It's very controversial, right? We like eating processed food. It's available everywhere. We like fast food. We like going to restaurants. Sometimes our lives are so busy, we don't have as much time to cook at home. But I think it's really important to think about diet as another disease modifying factor that can prevent psychiatric diseases as well as neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. So we know there are multiple studies that have been done that something like Mediterranean diet, or diet that is rich with fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, healthy carbs, is really important. Multivitamin supplements have been shown to ward off Alzheimer's disease for longer. And all of staying away from the processed foods, taking time to cook that dinner for the whole family at night, I think is another important factor to consider when trying to stay healthy. So I think, yeah, diet is very very important. And Another little plug I want to make here is blueberries. You know, I went to a scientific conference and we were in a taxi, and we shared a taxi to go to the airport. And the lady was with Blueberry Association of America, and I thought, wow, what are you doing at an Alzheimer's conference? And she said, you know, blueberries are actually very rich in antioxidants. And we know that oxidative stress is something that is key to development of Alzheimer's disease. And antioxidants in blueberries and in other fruits can actually help counteract that oxidative stress and prevent Alzheimer's disease. So, you know, little things like having blueberries for breakfast can really make a big difference.
What would you suggest for breakfast other than blueberries? But that's a great point. If the kids, for ourselves, for our kids, what other kinds of food would you suggest that are rich in those nutrients that
Yeah,
breakfast?
I think that, especially for women, I think grains are really helpful. So, oatmeal, quinoa, wheat, whole wheat, especially, can be really good because those are enriched with iron. And iron is really hard to get, for women, especially with the diet and the foods that are available to us. Also, these complex carbohydrates take longer time to break down, so we won't have a crash right after breakfast. So if we had something like cereal or a croissant for breakfast, because of those simple carbohydrates, we'll have this sugar high and then a crash. And of course, by the time you get into the office, you're like, I'm exhausted already, and I still have a full day ahead of me, right? So having some of those healthy grains can actually sustain you until lunch, and help get things done. Calcium is also very important. Important to get. So yeah, iron and calcium, I think, are key, and also having some sort of protein for breakfast. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you want to have an egg, that's also a great option. Yeah, whole wheat toast, things like that. And of course, we're a coffee culture, so it's hard to stay away from coffee as well.
What are your thoughts on granola bars? Let's say if there's a busy household and they're just trying to get everybody out the door,
Yeah,
what should
yeah,
we
I
be
think
looking at?
granola bars can be really good because those usually have nuts and seeds in them. And nuts and seeds have certain things that are not available in other foods, like omega 3s. So there were clinical studies that showed that ingesting omega 3 and increasing the levels of omega 3s that are present in seeds, in flax seeds, in um, yeah, those can really help
Mhm.
uh, keeping our bodies healthy.
Right. So there's definitely a lot of information out there, and it's easy to
Mhm.
find on YouTube. And it's good to cross-reference your information to make sure you're getting accurate information. But
Exactly.
definitely food can make a big difference, right? Because I mean, it's so easy to gravitate to the junk food. And,
Yes,
and even for
exactly. And
our
I think,
kids.
we are bombarded by snacks that are high in processed sugar. So that's something that I would recommend decreasing, in your diet. It's very easy to have those sugary cereals and give those to children with all the food colorings and all these different things because they look so exciting. But I think in the long run, those can lead to cavities and just not productive children as well as adults. So I think it's important to minimize the amount of sugar being consumed as well by children as well as adults.
And there's uh, breakfast clubs at schools trying to
Mhm.
help kids to eat in the morning. So
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Eating in the morning. Should every child eat in the morning? Should it?
Yeah, so that really depends on what it is they're feeding the children. Personally, with my daughter, we send all of her meals to school because that way we can control exactly what goes into her body,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that she can have a productive day and she can learn, because school can be really challenging for children. They're learning so much the whole day, and their brain needs to be functioning at optimal level. And things like leafy greens, for instance, like spinach and kale, are really hard to get into children.
Mm-hmm.
Usually children, are very reluctant to eat those. So
Mm-hmm.
what I like to do, I like to make smoothies. And
Mm-hmm.
actually that's something that I send to my daughter, and she loves those. Put a little bit of banana, a little bit of blueberry, and a little bit of spinach. She cannot even taste the spinach, and she downs that thing so quickly. And it keeps her alert, and it keeps her thinking the whole day. And spinach, as you know, is very rich in vitamin A and C, and it has a bunch of other different beneficial things. So I think it's important to get children to eat the foods they should be eating, and not the foods that are, the junk foods that are easily available that have no nutritional value.
So that's a good point for parents and for their children. So we too, I
Exactly.
eat a lot of spinach now once I realize how much nutrients were in it, that it's so much more powerful than a lot of the other, than many of the uh, leafy type of vegetables. But a lot of anything leafy is usually pretty good. I heard once said, if you can eat it the way God created it, then it's as close as it can be to natural, right? So
Exactly.
whenever it's processed, it doesn't look the way it was created to be. So
Exactly.
that's why if we
Yes.
get more fruits into our kids and vegetables the way it comes off of a plant, we know that it's got more nutrients than.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you'll see a really big difference. The amount of cavities will go down. When you go to the dentist like, I have nothing. There's nothing to do for me here. She's on a good diet, or he's. Your child is on a good diet. The teeth look fine. The immunity looks fine. There's no allergies. They're active. They participate in sports. Their grades pick up. So it really makes a big difference what it is they eat. And I think, for the parents to control what it is their child eats can make a big difference, because children, frankly, they don't know what's good for them, right? They don't know what they should be eating.
And some of us parents are on that journey too and are figuring that out. So
Exactly.
it's important for us to kind of educate ourselves on what we're eating too. And I'm a little bit constantly doing that and trying to improve on that because I enjoy my sweets. So I've had to cut that out. So one way I cut it out is by not buying it. That's my strategy. My husband says, "You don't have willpower." Well, you know what? This is my strategy and it's working. So
Baby steps. I think baby steps are key, because otherwise you don't stick with it, right? You have to have a strategy that will work. And taking those baby steps, you're going to get closer to your goal versus just like quitting cold turkey.
So I hope parents out there listening, I hope your sugar intake, think about that, reflect on that. And if you need to lessen it, it's good for your brain health, right, Senya?
Exactly. Exactly.
And a sleep, having more sleep and figuring out ways and strategies to fall asleep. And sometimes one way doesn't work for another. It could be relaxing music. It could be reading that book. I tend to fall asleep when I'm reading a book. I want to read and then I fall asleep. So I
It's
do more
working. That's all that
audiobooks.
matters.
I do more audiobooks now, but I'm working on reading and not falling asleep. Um, so yeah, that's great information. Now, what about exercise? Was that your third one? Exercise.
Yes. So exercise is another key, disease modifying factor, or something that helps ward off the disease. Actually, there is great colleague of mine, also here at Massachusetts General Hospital, Christiane Ran, who studies the effect of exercise on development of Alzheimer's disease. And she discovered that when we exercise, our muscles release a chemical called irisin. This irisin crosses the blood brain barrier and goes directly into the brain. And it does a lot of wonderful things for our brain, including generating more healthy neurons. So neurons are the cells in in our brain that do all the heavy lifting, that do the thinking, the smelling, the remembering, all the different things. So when we exercise, there are chemicals in our bodies that are being produced that go directly into the brain to keep our brain healthy. So that's in addition to the endorphins that make us feel, feel better. And also, exercise is a great way to reduce stress. It's something that I have personally experienced. If I'm stressed about something, I get onto an elliptical, and 12 minutes later, I'm not stressed anymore. It just dissipates, right? It goes away. So it's a great stress relief.
Well, I mean, your position being assistant professor of neurology at Harvard is medical school is a big accomplishment, and I'm sure it brings on stress. So,
It's not the easiest job in the world, but we make do.
well, even just getting to that position, I mean, that's wonderful. It's a great accomplishment, and the stress moving, trying to move yourself to where you want it to be. Any thoughts on how you dealt with stress? You said exercise. Anything else that how you deal with your stress to help you
Yes,
accomplish where you?
I think, the biggest challenge for me was I first received my PhD. I worked on my PhD in neuroscience at Case Western Reserve University. And at that point, I felt very supported by my PhD advisor and who was also the chair of the department and the department itself, that I wouldn't say that my job was very stressful. But when I became a postdoctoral fellow and I moved to Boston, to Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School, the stress level definitely picked up. And at that point, I was doing all the wrong things. My sleeping habits weren't that great. I loved eating junk food and sugary snacks, lots of processed food, and I didn't exercise regularly. So I made all of the mistakes plus the stress compounded, and I had a really challenging time. There came a point where I realized something has to be changed. I have to change something. Something has to happen. And I was in my early 30s. I was relatively young at that time, and at that point I realized that whatever it is I am doing is not working for me. It's not working for my body, and it's not working for my career. So at that point, I started making drastic changes in my diet, in my exercise, in my sleep, and really prioritizing. I did a lot of research on all those things and really prioritizing all of those good habits to allow me to keep going. And it took several years to really streamline my habits, but we got there. That's the most important thing.
So that's hope for the parents out there, because, just because we hear all this information doesn't mean, oh, now we're going to do it all. But if we start in small steps, like you said, start small, and it took you 2 years, that means it might take us a little longer, it might take us 2 years, but to know to keep going and keep trying and not giving up just because it didn't work yet, but to
Exactly.
prioritize our health. I had a parent, well, I had a student who was having a very difficult time in class, and her emotion were just all over the place, and she was angry, and she would throw things, and she hit, And when speaking to the family, the mother shared with me that she was depressed. And so being depressed means it's difficult to be there for your child and give them the attention they need. So that
Right.
mental state and working on that mental health is so important. And I think at that moment was really an aha moment for me, because I thought, wow, my heart went out to that parent who was going through what she was going through. My heart went out to that child. And so if we can prevent getting to that point, and even if we get to that point, there's ways to push through it, move through it, because it's so important to prioritize our mental health,
Right.
our brain health. And you've given us some good strategies, and strategies that perhaps parents have heard some of them, with great details in understanding more of sleep, coming from a research end of it. Was great to hear that. But I'm hoping that the parents out there, if there's one of those things they can start on, I mean, even exercising, and I mean, walking. Do you think walking is enough, or do you think it should be more than walking?
Yeah, so in the olden days, we thought that exercise meant running marathons and triathlons and swimming and biking and all these different things. Depending on your body, depending on your age, depending on your lifestyle, a simple walk once a day could be enough. It really is important to listen to your body and work with your lifestyle and your schedule, because ultimately it's not a diet, or it's not a certain exercise routine that you got to follow. It's a lifestyle. It's a permanent change that we're trying to make, that will make us healthier, that will make us better, more productive. Uh, and if we are better, healthier, and more productive, we can be much better for our children as well.
Absolutely.
So another point I wanted to make for the parents out there who have, maybe are sandwiched in this sandwich generation, that have maybe younger children and whose parents are aging. I think it can be really challenging. Life is really busy, right? If they're working parents, to have time for all of these different things, right? They're trying to develop a relationship with their children, so that's establishing rapport, so the children can listen to them, and so that they can impart the wisdom that they want to impart onto their children. But also they have to maintain that relationship with their aging parents and see how their parents are doing, and checking in and the visits and all these different things. And they also want to do well at work, they also want to do well in their marriage, and all these different things. So it's, I think, key for the sandwich generation to maintain their health and their mental health, because if they are feeling well, that they can have productive relationships with their family and their friends, as well as at work. So it comes full circle. I think mental health not only keeps us happy and healthy, but also keeps those around us happy and healthy as well.
There's more talk now than ever about mental health, and there's more of a need, or we're being much more um, open about it. But it's definitely so important. It needs to be a priority. Like you said, we need to prioritize this and make it important in our lives. So I hope parents out there listening know that um, it doesn't matter where you're at. Maybe you are doing some of these things, maybe you're doing all of them. That's great. Maybe you need to inspire someone else to do it, or help your kids to work on some of these things. I mean, I used to be one of the parents that said, no, I'm not running around bringing my kids to this place, that place, hockey, soccer. And then I realized it's good mental health for them to be out there exercising. And I changed my whole perspective. And so I'm doing the running around, meeting a lot of people. Hey, um, Opinions change with time. Sometimes with different knowledge, you change your opinion. But having our own mental health is important. Helping our kids, what we learn for ourselves, then we can pass on and use it for our kids. And so, yes, you've given us a lot of great information. So to start off with goal setting on some of these things, is there any suggestion how they can maybe just start goal setting on how they can improve their mental health?
Yeah. So I think having or developing a system in place that will help you stick to the routine. So let's say if you want to improve your sleep, right? First step would be to go to bed on time, right? So maybe have an alarm on your phone that comes off, goes off half an hour before you have to go to bed or however long it takes you to get ready, right? Have that alarm. As soon as that alarm goes off, you get up from whatever it is you're doing, you're going getting ready for bed. Um, that's with sleep. If you're trying, let's say, to cut sugar from your diet, right? Go through the kitchen, through the pantry, go through the house, make sure household is on board, but get rid of all the things that contain refined sugar, right? Um, if you want to improve your exercise routine, have those sneakers by the door so you make it to the gym, right? Make it easy on yourself to develop these good habits and really stick with the healthy routine. Um, I think these small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for those points. And I also wanted to ask you, outside of what we've been talking about, if parents have want to help their kids to dream big and dream bigger. So if someone, let's say for yourself, who was able to become an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, do you have any tips for them, for parents, on how to encourage their kids to not set limits for themselves and to know that they can accomplish more than they think they can?
Yeah, so I think encouragement, right, of children to dream big because we are self-limiting, right? And it could be the child or the parent saying, "Oh, I'm not good enough. My grades are not good enough. Oh, I'm in this town in the middle of nowhere. How can I go to this amazing school, to study whatever it is I'm interested in studying?" And these self limiting beliefs is what prevents us from dreaming big. And I think if we, think about that and do a bit of research of, what does it take to get into an Ivy League school, or what does it take to land this job, or what does it take to develop this career, it becomes more immediate. We can take actionable steps to actually brings us closer to that goal. And networking, a lot of networking. That's what I would recommend. Networking was something that really helped me along my journey, along my path. Talking to individuals that are already there. What did it take for them to get there? How did they get there? And as you know, my PhD advisor, Lynn Lenmesser, passed away this past year. And I was rereading her autobiography of the Society for Neuroscience. And she mentioned that it's not a straight line to get somewhere, right? You think that you're going from point A to point B. The odds are there are multiple ways to get to the same place. So even if something happens that prevents you from getting there right away, don't give up, right? It might take you extra steps, maybe a little bit of wandering around, but if your heart is really set on achieving that goal, you will get there. So I think it's really important to, be patient with yourself when dreaming big, because big dreams take a while to come true.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our time together. Senya, I appreciate your time you invested in Parents Make a Difference. Thank you so much.
It was great being here. Thank you, Josie. Best of luck to you and your listeners.
Thank you. Parents, remember, you make a difference.